Hi everybody! In today's video, I'm going to be going through the notes for lesson 2.5, which is all about graphing a line in point-slope form. In our previous video, we learned how to graph a line in slope-intercept form. Today's equation is going to look a little bit different. Today's equation does not say y equals mx plus b. Instead, it says y equals the y number plus m parentheses the x minus the x number. There are going to be three important numbers for us to look at in this equation. The first number we're going to look at is m. The second number we're going to look at is the x number, and the third number we're going to look at is the y number. Let's talk about what each of these numbers tells us about the graph that we need to make. By looking at these numbers, we are going to be able to identify two key features. The first key feature is the starting point. And the second key feature is the slope. Now let's start by talking about the slope. Just like in our equation y equals mx plus b, m is the slope. In this equation, the m is always going to be the number that is multiplied by the parentheses. You're going to see an x inside the parentheses, and the m is always going to be multiplied by the parentheses at the beginning of it. We're also going to need to find a starting point. Unlike slope-intercept form, our starting points are not going to be on the y-axis today. They're going to be a random point somewhere on the graph. So in order to identify that starting point, we are going to need to figure out two numbers. We are going to need to figure out the x number that we should start at, and we are going to need to figure out the y number that we should start at. In order to figure out the x number, we are going to look at the number that is inside the parentheses. So you're going to see an x, and right after the x is going to be your x number. The other thing that's special about the x number is that it is always going to be the opposite of the number that you see. So if you see a positive number, then the number you're going to write down is the negative. If you see a negative number, then the number that you're going to write down is the positive. Now the y number is the last number that you're going to look for. The y number is either going to be the first number in the equation or the last number in the equation. It's kind of a floating number. It could be at the beginning or it could be at the end, but the important thing is that it is not connected to the parentheses. It's not multiplied by the parentheses, and it's not inside of the parentheses. Let's start by practicing identifying these key features. So for these equations, we're not going to graph them. We're just going to practice identifying the key features. Each and every time we need to identify the key features, we're going to find two things. We're going to find a starting point, and we're going to find the slope. In my opinion, slope is the easiest to find. You just need to look for the parentheses. The slope is always going to be right before the parentheses. So in this problem, my slope is -1, and I'm going to write -1 over 1 to remind myself that slope is a fraction. The next number I'm going to look for is the x value. Now the x value is going to be inside of the parentheses. But remember, the x value is always the opposite of the number that you see. So since I see a +2, I'm going to write down a -2. The y number is whatever number you didn't already use. In this case, it's the 3. It's the first number in the equation, and I didn't use it for my slope or for my x. So that means it must be my y. Let's try that again. In the next equation, the key features are still going to be the point and the slope. In my opinion, the slope is the easiest one to find because if we just write m parentheses, we can find the slope by lining it up. It would just be 3 over 5. My x number is the next easiest to find. It's always going to be inside of the parentheses next to the letter x. In this case, it's a -8, but remember, the x number is always the opposite of the number you see. So if I see a -8, I'm going to write down a +8. The last number I'm going to look for is the y number, and here's the thing. It's the only number we didn't already use, so it would just be -1. Let's try that again. Again, the key features are still going to be a point and a slope. I'm going to start with the slope. So I'm going to write m parentheses, and I can see that the number that is right before the parentheses, which is the slope, is 2/3. My x number is always going to be inside of the parentheses. But since it's a -8, I'm going to make it the opposite. Even though I see a minus, I'm going to write down a +8. For my y number, it's going to be whatever number I didn't already use for something else, which is -4. Last but not least, before we practice graphing, let's do one more. So my starting point and my slope are my key features. I'm going to find my slope first. So m parentheses. My m is a -5, and I'm going to write that over 1 to remind myself that my slope is a fraction. Now my x number is going to be inside of the parentheses, but it's also going to be the opposite of the number that I see. So if I see a +6, I'm going to write down a -6. My y number is going to be the only number I haven't used already, which is a -2. Now that we know how to identify the key features, let's practice making our graph. So first, I'm going to find the key features. On my paper, I'm going to write down point and slope. Now again, I think the slope is my favorite number to find first. So if I write down m parentheses above the parentheses, I can see that the slope is -5. And I'm going to put that over 1 to remind myself that the slope is always a fraction. Next, I'm going to look for my x number. My x number is going to be inside of the parentheses right by the letter x. So I'm going to get not +2, but the opposite, which is -2 as my x number. My y number is whatever number is left, so that would be the 3. I'm going to graph my starting point first. So my starting point is the first thing I'm going to put on my graph paper, and that is -2, 3, so right here. Then I'm going to use my slope. Now remember, slope is rise over run, so I'm going to go down 5 spaces and to the right 1 space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to the right 1, and put a new point there. Since there's no more room, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm almost out of room, 5 to the right 1, and then I'm going to draw my nice straight line through my graph paper. let's try that a couple more times. So for number 5, I'm going to start by identifying my key features. I'm going to have a starting point, and I'm going to have a slope. Now my slope is the easiest thing for me to find. M parentheses, and my slope is 1/3. My x is the number that's inside of the parentheses, but in this case, since it's a -1, I'm going to do the opposite, and I'm going to write down a +1. My y number is whatever number is left, so -2. Again, I'm going to graph my starting point first. So I'm going to go to the point 1, -2. And then from there, I'm going to use my slope. My slope is +1/3. So rise 1, run 3. I could also go backwards. To reverse my slope, I would go down 1 and I would go left 3. So down 1, left 3, down 1, left 3. Then I'm going to draw my nice straight line. Last but not least, we're going to identify our key features. So we are going to need to find the starting point and the slope. In this problem, I'm going to find my slope first. So if I write down m parentheses, I can see that my m is -4, and I'm going to write over 1 to remind myself that that's a fraction. My x is going to be inside the parentheses, but it's going to be the opposite of the number that I see. So if I see a +2, I'm going to write a -2. My y is -3. Now I'm going to graph my starting point first, which means I have -2, -3 as my starting point. From there, I'm going to use my slope to graph more points. So down 4, right 1. Well, there's not quite enough room for that, so I'm going to have to reverse myself and go up 4 and left 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, left 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, left 1. Then I'm going to draw my nice straight line. That's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for some practice.